A very good morning to you all and welcome to Deepwater Baptist Church Online. This morning I want to start by saying a huge congratulations to Captain Tom Moore, who topped the charts this week with his duet with Michael Ball of the song You'll Never Walk Alone. And Captain Tom so far has raised more than £28 million for the NHS. So Captain Tom, we want to say a massive congratulations to you and thank you, not only for the money that you've raised for the NHS, but for being an inspiration to us all. You're truly fantastic. We wish you a happy birthday later on this week too, and thank you for all that you've done. Those words, "You'll never walk alone," are inspiring words, aren't they? And they're words that Christians have held on to for many years, because Jesus said to his disciples that they would never walk alone. He said, "I will never leave you or forsake you." And he said, "I will be with you always to the very ends of the age." There are times when we know that that's true, aren't there? There are times when we feel God's presence and we're so aware of him. But there are also times when we go through storms in life, when we struggle to feel the presence of God, and we wonder where God is. And perhaps we wonder if God cares about what we're going through at this present time. Maybe you're going through a storm in your life right now, and you're wondering, where is God in all of this? Does God care about what's going on in my life right now and the situation I'm in? If you've ever asked that question, if you've ever wondered where God is, then you're certainly not alone. In actual fact, the disciples of Jesus once asked that very same question when they were going through a storm. This morning I want to share with you one of my favourite passages in the whole Bible. It's a time when the disciples of Jesus were in a boat on the Sea of Galilee, and they suddenly found themselves in the midst of a storm. It's in several of the Gospels, but this morning I want to read it to you from Mark chapter 4. And it says this: "That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let us go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, 'Teacher, don't you care if we drown?' He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to the disciples, 'Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?' They were terrified and asked each other, 'Who is this? Even the wind and waves obey him.'" In the midst of that storm, the disciples of Jesus asked Jesus, "Don't you care if we drown?" Obviously, they were terrified for their life. And remember, these were big, strong fishermen. They must have been through a few storms in their time, so this storm must have been something else. But in their panic, they question whether Jesus really cares about them. They question where he is. I want to encourage you that if you've asked that question yourself, it is not a lack of faith. Sometimes we think it is. Sometimes we think it's wrong to question where God is and if he cares. But the disciples weren't exercising a lack of faith here. Rather, they were wrestling with their faith and what they knew to be true of Jesus with what they were experiencing right now. Sometimes when we're going through those storms in life and we can't feel that presence of God, it's a struggle because we know that God can do something about the situation we're in. We know that God is with us, really, but we can't feel it and we're not aware of it. So the wrestling that we have going on in us is, well, how does this experience that I'm going through equate with what I know to be true of God? So I know that God is with me, but I can't feel it right now. And I know that God can do something about this situation. So why does he appear to not be acting? It's not a lack of faith. So that's the first thing I want to encourage you with. It's okay to ask that question of God. But secondly, I want to say that being a Christian doesn't mean that we won't go through any storms in life. And I say that because there are some people that think that once you become a Christian, it's all plain skies and plain sailing. That Christians don't face any problems. I wish that that were the case, but it simply isn't true. You only have to look at the life of Jesus to see that Jesus had his issues and had problems the same as the rest of us. And if Jesus had to go through difficulties in life, then so will we as his followers. It doesn't mean that you're not a Christian just because you're going through a storm in life. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care about you just because you're facing difficulties right now. So if that's true, then what's so great about being a Christian? It is this, that you'll never walk alone. See, the disciples had forgotten something really quite important, and it's something that sometimes we forget. Where was God in the midst of this storm? He was right there with them in the boat. Jesus was there. He did care. Of course he cared, because he was going through this storm as well. Just because they had Jesus in the boat with them didn't stop them going through the storm. Jesus was there in that boat with them, going through that storm with them. God was right there in the boat. The Christian life doesn't mean that we'll never go through any storms in life. But what it does mean is that when we go through those storms, that God goes through those storms with us. He is right by our side, walking alongside us, going through that storm with us. So if you're going through a storm right now, then I want to encourage you that God has not abandoned you. He loves and he cares for you. And he is right by your side, walking through this storm with you. So when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid, because you'll never walk alone.